Imagine a kingdom where loyalty wasn't just expected, it was sacred. A place where honoring your bloodline was the highest duty a person could fulfill. In Nzuri, every drumbeat, every prayer, every festival celebrated this bond. Now, imagine standing at a crossroads where saving your own life meant breaking that bond forever. This was the heartbreaking choice Queen Makeda faced. Her decision would tear through her people like a silent storm. Today, we dive deep into her forgotten story, one soaked in fear, betrayal, and the heavy cost of survival. Before we journey into the past, think about this. Have you ever made a decision you thought was right, only to later realize it came at a terrible cost? Imagine that feeling multiplied by an entire nation depending on you. Queen Makeda stood before such a decision, her heart pulled between saving her people and saving herself. As we explore her tragic path, stay with me, because hidden within this tale is another shocking story. A king so committed to loyalty, he executed his 7 wives in a single, unforgettable moment. Long before modern maps and borders, there was Nzuri, a shining jewel in the heart of the continent. The land glowed with golden rivers and forests so ancient they seemed to breathe. Nzuri's people lived by 3 sacred truths: loyalty, courage, and honor. Their queen, Makeda, embodied these values. Her braided hair glinted with gold. Her voice carried the wisdom of 1,000 elders. She was more than a ruler. She was the heartbeat of her nation. But even the purest heart cannot always survive the darkest storms that life sends. Far beyond Nzuri's thriving borders, shadows were gathering. Foreign invaders, hungering for Nzuri's beauty and wealth, crafted a plan not of war, but of betrayal. They understood something few did. Real strength lies not in walls, but in trust, and trust could be broken. They began to whisper lies and promises, sending gifts wrapped in poison to Nzuri's court. If they could sway the queen, the kingdom would crumble from within. And so began a silent invasion, not with swords and fire, but with smiles and carefully planted seeds of fear. In the royal chambers, Queen Makeda struggled. Days blurred into nights as she weighed the impossible. She could stand firm and watch her people be slaughtered. Or she could negotiate with the invaders, hoping to save lives by sacrificing tradition. Every drumbeat outside her window reminded her of the trust she held. Every child's laughter echoed the cost of failure. Fear grew inside her like a creeping vine. And when the enemy set fire to Nzuri's outer villages, forcing her hand, Makeda made her fateful, tragic decision. Under a blood-red moon, Queen Makeda met secretly with the invaders. Their promises were sweet, their smiles full of triumph. In exchange for opening Nzuri's gates, she would be crowned as ruler over a new, larger kingdom. A queen still, but a queen at what cost? At dawn, following her secret pact, she addressed her people. She spoke of peace, of dreams fulfilled, of gifts from the gods. And when she commanded the gates opened, Nzuri welcomed its destroyers with open arms, unaware of the doom that waited beyond. The invasion came not with a roar, but with a whisper. Once inside, the foreign armies struck with merciless speed. The streets ran red as warriors fell. Families were torn apart. Ancient temples burned. The songs of Nzuri were silenced by screams. Queen Makeda watched from her high balcony, her heart sinking into darkness. She had thought to save her people, but all she had saved was herself, and even that hope soon crumbled. Betrayal, once unleashed, cannot be controlled. And for Makeda, salvation turned swiftly into condemnation. At first, the invaders kept their promises. They crowned Makeda as queen over the ruins of her homeland. But the crown was a mockery, heavy, hollow, dripping with shame. She ruled over ashes, not glory. Her once admiring subjects, now prisoners, whispered her name like a curse. Songs about her were sung in secret, sad songs, full of loss and rage. Deep in the mountains, the survivors began to gather. They lit fires that no invader could snuff out, fires that carried a single message. Nzuri's soul could not be broken. Out of the ashes rose Kamari, a prince of Makeda's own bloodline. He carried no army at first, only stories, dreams, and an unshakable spirit. He traveled in secret, gathering hearts instead of soldiers. The broken families of Nzuri rallied to him. With each whispered oath and each hidden gathering, Nzuri's spirit reignited. Kamari understood something vital. You do not defeat betrayal with anger alone. You defeat it by restoring hope. And so, as Makeda sat alone in her empty palace, a new resistance grew strong around her. When the time came, Kamari's victory was not a bloody conquest. It was a quiet uprising, a chain reaction of loyalty reborn. The invaders, so sure of their control, were swept away by the very people they had sought to enslave. And Makeda? She was captured, but not killed. Death would have been too easy, too quick. Instead, she was stripped of every symbol of her power, her crown, her robes, her jewels, and banished into the deepest forest. Alone, forgotten, she wandered into the mist, carrying her guilt forever. You might think that's where the story ends, but Nzuri's heart beat on. The ruins of the old city were never rebuilt in stone. Instead, they became sacred ground, a place where future leaders took oaths of loyalty. They swore, not to thrones or crowns, but to the people themselves. No leader could ascend without kneeling among those broken stones, feeling the weight of Makeda's mistake pressing down upon them. Loyalty was no longer a word spoken lightly. It was a blood promise, bound to the earth itself. And just when you think the tale couldn't reveal any more, another thread emerges from the shadows. In a neighboring kingdom called Barugu, a powerful king named Oban faced betrayal from a place even closer than foreign invaders. His story, like Makeda's, would etch itself into history, but in a far more brutal way. While Makeda's betrayal came from fear, the betrayal Oban faced was born from ambition and greed. And when he discovered it, his reaction would shock the entire region, staining his reign with unforgettable tragedy. King Oban of Barugu was known across the land as a just ruler, a man whose wisdom seemed carved from the ancient stones themselves. His kingdom thrived under his careful watch, and his 7 wives, chosen from noble clans, symbolized unity among the tribes. But when the news of Nzuri's downfall reached Barugu, whispers of fear spread. Some of the king's wives, desperate to secure their own survival, began secret talks with enemies lurking beyond Barugu's borders. They believed betrayal would protect them. They believed wrong. Oban's palace, once a place of celebration and peace, grew heavy with suspicion. Servants spoke in hushed tones. Guards tightened their patrols. Tensions thickened the air like smoke before a fire. The 7 wives, once symbols of hope, now became shadows plotting in candlelit corners. But even in the depths of deception, loyalty finds its champions. A faithful servant, overhearing whispers of conspiracy, risked everything to bring the truth to Oban's ears. The news pierced the king's heart like a spear. But even heartbreak would not weaken his resolve. Summoning the royal court to the great hall, Oban stood before his people. With the weight of 1,000 generations on his shoulders, his wives stood accused, trembling beneath the banners of the clans they had once vowed to honor. There were no long trials, no desperate pleas. Oban, who loved justice more than comfort, knew what he had to do. With a voice as steady as the mountains, he sentenced all 7 wives to death. It was a sentence that would haunt his kingdom for centuries to come. The day of judgment was cloaked in heavy mist, as if even the heavens wept for what was to come. In a solemn ceremony without music, without cheer, the 7 wives were led to the sacred grounds where oaths were taken and broken alike. One by one, their lives were claimed, not by rage, but by a sorrowful duty to protect the kingdom's soul. When the last wife fell, Oban turned away, his heart a battlefield of regret and necessity. Loyalty had demanded the ultimate sacrifice, and Oban had answered. After that day, Barugu changed forever. Where once festivals filled the air with music and laughter, now a deep and respectful silence often lingered. Every new leader was reminded of the cost of betrayal. Oban himself lived on, respected but heavy with sorrow, carrying the invisible scars of the decision he could never undo. Songs were sung not to glorify the executions, but to mourn the price of loyalty. And when travelers spoke of Barugu, they spoke in hushed, reverent tones, as if recalling a sacred and terrible lesson. If Queen Makeda's story teaches us how fear can twist even the noblest heart, then King Oban's story shows us how loyalty, once wounded, demands a price too steep for any soul to bear lightly. Both stories, though different in path, end in heartbreak. Both remind us that loyalty is not a shield against pain. It is often the source of it. And as their stories merged into legend, a question was whispered across the lands. Is it better to survive by betrayal or die upholding honor? Today, in the crumbling ruins of Nzuri and the still sacred fields of Barugu, the wind still carries their stories. Travelers who venture deep into the forests say you can feel it, the sadness, the weight, the lingering questions left unanswered by time. Moss-covered stones mark where oaths were broken and reforged. In the evenings when the mist curls low and the stars blink awake, if you listen closely, you might hear the echoes of songs that are no longer sung aloud but still remembered by the earth itself. Nzuri's ruins remain a place of pilgrimage, not to mourn Queen Makeda's fall, but to remember the painful beauty of forgiveness. Every year, young leaders gather among the fallen pillars to renew vows, not to power, not to themselves, but to the people they are sworn to serve. Kneeling before the broken stones, they touch the ground and whisper promises. To never forget the past, to never trade honor for fear. Makeda's betrayal, terrible as it was, became the foundation for a new kind of leadership. Meanwhile, in Barugu, the lessons carved into history remain carved into custom. To this day, no ruler is crowned without first walking the silent path, the very ground where Oban's wives met their fate. It is a walk taken barefoot, alone, in total silence, under the judgment of the ancestors. No speeches are made, no songs are sung. Only a quiet vow is made deep within the heart, to place loyalty to the people above all else, no matter the personal cost. The memory of betrayal remains their shield. When we look back at these stories, it's easy to judge. It's easy to ask why Makeda didn't stand firm, or why Oban chose death over mercy. But real history, the kind that stains hands and souls, is never that simple. Fear changes people. Responsibility crushes even the strongest hearts. Every choice, whether made in a palace or a battlefield, carries weight beyond what the chooser ever intended. And maybe that's the true tragedy of Queen Makeda and King Oban. Not that they failed, but that they had to choose at all. Makeda's story forces us to face the uncomfortable truth that even good intentions, when guided by fear, can lead to ruin. Her love for her people, twisted by terror, became the very thing that destroyed them. Yet in her exile, as she wandered the forgotten woods, perhaps she found a kind of redemption. Perhaps her sorrow, carved deeply into her bones, whispered lessons into the earth itself, lessons that would grow into mighty trees, standing silent witness to the fact that even betrayal can birth new beginnings. Oban's legacy, though lined with sorrow, reminds us that leadership is not about personal safety or comfort, it is about sacrifice. He chose the kingdom over love, over forgiveness, over his own peace of mind. His heart broke so his people could remain whole. In choosing duty over personal happiness, he ensured Barugu would not fall as Nzuri did. And in doing so, he showed that true loyalty sometimes demands the heaviest toll. His story is not one of cruelty, but of painful, unwavering dedication to his people. Even now, thousands of seasons later, the stories of Nzuri and Barugu echo across the lands. Elders gather young ones under baobab trees and recount the choices made by Queen Makeda and King Oban. Their voices, rich and solemn, paint pictures of golden cities, betrayed trusts, broken hearts, and reborn hope. And as the stars glitter overhead, children listen with wide, unblinking eyes, feeling the weight of ancient choices settle gently on their own young shoulders. Stories do not die. They change those who hear them. As you listen today, I ask you, what would you have done? Faced with the terror of total destruction, would you hold on to loyalty and risk it all, like Oban? Or would fear pull you, whispering promises of survival, like it did to Makeda? There is no easy answer. That's what makes these stories so powerful. They remind us that real choices are messy, painful, and sometimes, whatever choice you make, you still lose something precious. One. And yet, even through that loss, history watches and remembers. Stories like these are not just entertainment. They are mirrors. They force us to ask hard questions of ourselves. What do we truly value? What would we sacrifice for safety? For honor? For survival? In a world that often prizes quick rewards over lasting loyalty, these forgotten folk tales stand as beacons, lighting paths we may not even know we're walking. Each choice made by Makeda and Oban now lives in the questions we ask ourselves today, whispering caution, urging courage, reminding us that we too are part of history. If you felt the weight of these stories today, share your thoughts. What would you have chosen if you stood in Makeda's sandals or Oban's? Would you have been strong enough to resist fear, or wise enough to know when to fight and when to yield? I'd love to hear your reflections. These stories are not just meant to be heard. They are meant to be lived, debated, and carried forward. Comment below. Your voice matters. And together, we keep these ancient lessons alive for future generations. And if you love uncovering lost histories, forgotten heroes, and the deep wisdom of the past, make sure you subscribe to this channel. Turn on notifications so you never miss a journey into stories that shaped not just nations, but human hearts. Every week, we dive into the tales that built the world brick by brick, sorrow by sorrow, triumph by triumph. Because only when we know where we come from can we truly understand who we are and who we can still become. Thank you for spending this time with me. Thank you for honoring the memories of Queen Makeda, King Oban, and all those whose stories have survived the tides of time. Always remember, true strength does not come from titles, crowns, or victories. True strength comes from loyalty to your people, to your values, and most of all, to your heart. Stay curious, stay courageous, and never forget, every story you carry forward plants a seed for generations yet to come. 2